Nicole Huntsman here from moderncosmic.com. We have got our sun sign compatibility here on this video. If you know what sun sign means, fast forward to the timestamp you see or the description of the video. So in Western astrology, we take the year, the 12 calendar months, okay? And we divide them up according to the Earth's relationship to the sun. And this makes sense if you think back in the day when we were farmers. The movement of the sun, it's actually our movement, the tilt of our Earth relative to the sun and how it affects the seasons was very important. Springtime, time to plant, summertime to take care of and tend the fields, and of course fall time to harvest, and then winter was time to preserve the things that you had stored and make them last till spring again. Now, in astrology, we look at these 4 important dates that are repeatable. They happen every year, and they are the spring equinox, the summer solstice, the fall equinox, and the winter solstice, okay? We have our zodiac signs all set up according to these solar events. In the springtime, when we have our spring equinox, March 21st, this is that time of year when the equator of the Earth is facing the sun, directly, and the Earth is level, so to speak. So, we are on an axis and the Earth tilts. At this point in the year, we're level. It's why you can spin an egg and it will spin. Now, that's the beginning of the zodiac year, and really should be the beginning of our year. It would make sense to have the time when we go from winter, where we have more darkness than light, to the time when it's equal. We have an equal amount of daylight and equal amount of darkness, and then we move into the time of the year, the spring, when we have more light and less darkness each day, okay, until we hit the summer solstice, when we have the most light, more light, and less of the darkness. So with the zodiac, your sun sign falls during a month between those 4 events. So your sun sign is going to fall into one of these segments, okay? We've got the 12 months divided up into 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, according to those solar events. And then in each of those sections, we have 3 zodiac signs, okay? Your sun sign is important in that it shows your general life force. If you think of the sun is the star in our solar system. It is the mass, the giant mass, relative to us anyway, that is holding our solar system together. Without the sun, without our star, we wouldn't be here, and if something happened to our sun, we would all die, we would perish. We eat food that's made from the energy of the sun. We are literally made of sun, which is pretty cool. Someone's sun sign shows you the basic premise upon which their personality is built. It's like a canvas that we're going to paint upon. It doesn't have any paint on it yet, it's just the canvas. Is it wood? Is it metal? Is it canvas? Is it a panel? Is it round? Is it square? How big is it? How little is it? The zodiac sign will sort of illuminate, and it will explain and make granular sort of this very basic part of what we have to work with, okay, with the personality. So it's the first step in building, when you're looking at an astrology birth chart, it's the first thing you look at because you're going to build upon it, all right? And then all the brushstrokes come with the moon and all the angular houses and the planets and the aspects between the planets. That's when it becomes a beautiful picture. But until then, it's just you're one of the 12 zodiac signs. This is very general. Sun signs are general. It's a general vibe. You've got someone who's kind of more of a feeler, someone who's more of a thinker. But there are all different types of feelers and there are all different types of thinkers, okay? We get that granularity by looking at the entire birth chart and by putting the 2 people together, okay? You can have a feeler and a thinker get together and be really happy if they've got other things in their birth chart that make nice compatibility interaspects. If for some reason your sun signs don't get along well, let's say we've got someone who is, I don't know, let's say we've got a Capricorn and an Aquarius, very different energies. Capricorn's conservative, Aquarius is an iconoclast and does their own thing. On the surface, sun sign-wise, these 2 aren't going to jive perfectly. But if you look underneath, maybe they have moons that are both in water, and it gives them an emotional warmth, or it gives them an emotional depth to the cooler Capricorn Aquarius facade. There's another thing you want to look at between your compatibility charts. There are several, but another important primary planetary aspect that you want to look at, or planetary placement, I should say, that you want to look at. And I'm going to talk about this at the end of the video, so Stay tuned, watch the compatibility, and at the very end I'll explain to you how to find, if your sun compatibility isn't great, there's another thing you can look at that will indicate whether or not the two of you are going to have long-lasting happiness together, or if it's going to be sort of a no-win battle, okay? All right, let's get on to our sun signs, and please leave me comments if you have questions, and this is going to be a lot of fun. Aries. Aries are our people born March 21st to April 19th. This is the first sign in the zodiac. These people are born during the time of the year when we're moving from the winter time into the spring. So there's a vitality. There is an outgoing movement of energy, just like a plant would be blooming, you know, tulip would pop up through the soil. That's sort of the same thing that I see with an Aries. They're dynamic, they're outwardly focused, passionate, they need fuel, and they are fighters. Now, Aries also, these are the independent soldiers of the zodiac. They're our protagonists. They're the first person, the individual setting out on this journey of the zodiac. And as you move through the different zodiac signs, you'll see how this journey progresses. Self-starters like Aries, a lot of times they're perfectly comfortable going it alone. They're quite comfortable in leadership roles. They prefer to be in leadership roles. And so partnerships sometimes for Aries can be a little tricky. While they crave it, like, you know, that's human nature to desire closeness and warmth and affection from other people. Aries sometimes don't always know how to go about getting it. You know, they can be a little bit combative and a little, what's the word, scratchy, you know, in their relationships. But overall, these are brave, inspiring, self-starting, innovative, wonderful people that they just require a partner with some patience, and a partner who also is willing to be just as passionate and fiery as they are, but maybe perhaps a little bit more grounded. On the shadow side of Aries, we do have an individual who can be a little self-centered. They can be a little like the fool from the tarot deck, you know, stepping off the cliff while the dog is barking. Don't go that way, you know. They can sometimes be overly optimistic, or they can perhaps, instead of planning, they just want to jump into something and get going, and quite impulsive, okay? They can be a little difficult to teach at times. And they can sometimes lack the emotional tact that is required in love relationships and just general interpersonal relating. But if you have patience with an Aries, they are not the type to hold a grudge. They will usually kind of, they've let it out and then they're good after. So typically they're quite forgiving, and they have this childlike nature to them where it's almost a naivete and an innocence. They don't really mean anything by it. They just sometimes, like I said, they're not necessarily easy to teach, and so they have to kind of like do things over and over again until they figure them out. Aries in love. These are individuals, right? They like to make the first move. Aries prefers being the one doing the chasing, at least initially. Even Aries females, you know, with an Aries female, they can sometimes be accused of being too direct or too, you know, forward with men. In our culture, at least, you know, I'm here in the United States, in Western culture, traditionally men were the ones who would take that lead role. So female Aries sometimes can be accused of being ball busters or bitches or too brave or too headstrong, or, you know, these things. And I say bowl to that, you know. I think that Aries we need Aries men and women. These are the ones that are the brave, courageous individuals that will go for something. Now, in love, they need passion. They need passion, they need sex. They're a very physical sign, and they actually need fights, believe it or not. And when I say fights, I don't mean, you know, out and out emotional drama, but they like a little bit of like a little bit of a tension or friction in their relationships. They need that. If there was someone who doesn't really push back or lean back against them or was always pleasing them, they'll get annoyed and they'll get bored. And you don't want an annoyed, bored Aries, because you won't have them for long. They will be out of there, okay? Aries expectations in love. Because they're so passionate, they give the passionate spontaneously, freely, just whenever they want to. They're not the most like dependable, you know, they're going to do it when they want to do it, unless they have a lot of earth and other things in their chart. And even then, they kind of have to be the boss about when they're going to express their love. You can't really boss an Aries around. They can be this sort of childlike. They can be a little bit selfish, where they want all of their partner's love and attention, but they don't really have a problem with flirting or this kind of thing with other people, and nothing is meant by it. But you know, they need to have their freedom, but they also need to know that they are number one, and there's no one else in their partner's life. Aries' biggest fear, and this goes for all the zodiac signs, you look at their strength, and that's always tells you where their biggest fear is. With an Aries, you do have a bold, brave, enterprising individual, okay? But on the inside, they're like a little kid. The reason they're bold and brave is because it just doesn't occur to them that there's going to be an issue with them just striking it out and doing their thing and saying what they think. And, you know, they haven't, it's almost like their soul hasn't had enough experience, it hasn't been battered around enough to have sort of learned this lesson. So their biggest fear is actually they're quite vulnerable on the inside. This is like a little kid on the inside, and really what they really want is love, affection, warmth, and belonging. And I suppose it's what most of us want, but because Aries puts on this whole facade of being brave and independent and not needing anyone, you sort of just assume they really are not needing anyone, but that's actually quite incorrect. So anyone who can recognize the innocence in an Aries and can give them their space to be themselves, but also that needs them. A person that is emotionally brave enough to say to an Aries, I need your bravery and courage to keep me safe, to protect me. That is a way to tap into the part of the Aries that, yes, the part that's vulnerable, but they can project that onto you. It's a way for them to protect in an indirect way their own inner vulnerabilities, okay? May 21st through to June 20th, you'd be a Gemini sun. Gemini is a zodiac sign ruled by Mercury, and I always think of a flock of birds chirping at each other and talking to each other. Gemini energy is really busy. We've got Mercury, which orbits the sun in 88 days. That's the year. That's a year for Mercury, right? It's very quick. So Mercury types, whether it's a Gemini or it's a Virgo, they have a nervous energy to them and a busyness. Gemini applies it a little bit more to the mind, but well, Virgo does too. But it's communication. It's this sort of extroversion of this busyness. So a Gemini will, when they text you, or anyone who has a lot of Gemini in their chart, it's like long texts, or you know, they'll keep in touch with you, or they really need communication from their partner. They need that kind of contact. That's what they're good at. Also, Geminis, they need to be moving. They love to try new things. They always have new ideas. They're quite bubbly and refreshing, and they can change their minds a lot and change their life direction a lot because they almost have too many ideas and too many things going on. They can also be a little bit fidgety, mentally and physically, a little ADD. It's kind of a Mercury trait. So with our high-functioning Geminis, we have someone who's easy and breezy. They've got a cheerfulness, a versatility to them. They're good at multitasking. They're rational for the most part. You know, there are other things to look at in the chart that will suggest otherwise, but they're open to new experiences. They're spontaneous and fun, and they've got a good sense of humor. Happy, you know, happy-go-lucky. That's very Gemini. If you're pure Gemini, they don't wade too much in those deeper waters of deep emotion and existentialist feeling or thought, okay? Now, a low-functioning Gemini, on the low side, they can be overly loquacious, right? They can text you too much. They can maybe not recognize when it's time to just we don't have to be talking the whole time. We can sit in silence. Remember, you need to look at the person's moon sign, their Mercury, and other things in their chart and see where that sun is actually placed, which house it's placed in. That's going to adjust this because Gemini is mutable, so it's quite overridable by other signs that are in the birth chart. Talkative, and if they're not extroverted with their talkativeness, then it's happening inside of them. Okay, so they're going to analyze everything, and they're going to have a lot going on inside of them. So it's almost like the quiet Gemini is the one you really need to worry about because there's even more going on inside of them than the one that's extroverting it. All right, they have an anxiety to them. They can be flirty, not really anything necessarily meant by it, but they are quite flirty with the opposite sex. It can be hard to pin down. They can have problems with commitment. They can have like a Peter Pan thing happening where they just want to be like a little kid for forever and they won't grow up and, you know, like buckle down to the realities of life. So they can be a little bit childish in a different way than Aries. It's kind of like they just don't want to take things seriously. They want to be free to... It's almost even just they change their minds so much that they can't just stay focused on one path, okay? All right, so on to Gemini in love. Geminis like things to be fresh, light, bubbly, like I've said, you know, they're little butterflies flittering about from flower to flower. In love, they enjoy conversation. They have to have conversation. They have to have communication, whether it is verbal, whether it is written through text or letters, or sharing music with each other, or sharing poetry or things that have been read. You know, they are always like talking to someone. You know, true Gemini is quite talkative and social, and sometimes in romantic relationships, because they have this sweetness to them and this lightness and easiness, when they really fall in love with someone, they're not quite sure what to do with these feelings. It's kind of like, oh, geez, like a chakra area, right? This is where they operate, and it brings them down into the part of the body where there are no words. They can't put words on the feelings they're feeling, and that is really uncomfortable for someone who is used to and excels at putting words to things. So many times they run from commitment because they don't know what to do with it. They're like, what is this thing, okay? So in love, Geminis many times have a harder time with people who are perhaps more watery or more feelers, this kind of thing. You know, they like to keep things light. And again, look at the other signs in the chart. Look at where that sun is placed to give you an indicator. If you've got someone who's got multiple planets in air signs, then that's what we're talking about, okay? Okay. Okay. All right, Geminis in love, their expectations. Let me edit that. Gemini's expectations in love. So they need space, but they also need a lot of conversation and repartee and connection, which is a funny little thing, right? They just need space to know they can go and like wander off and do their little thing and then come back. They've learned some new things, and you've got to learn some new things. You have new stuff to talk about, new things to enjoy together, okay? They like jokes. They have like a little naughty sense of humor. They love playing together. They don't like emotional mind games. They do not like passive aggression. The water signs rule that realm, okay? The water signs are like professional at passive aggression and emotional manipulation. Geminis are just going to be like, what are you doing? That doesn't work for me. And then they'll just flit off somewhere else, okay? You can't tie them down. If you try to tie them down, you are fighting a losing battle. So, okay. Also, they don't like feeling a sense that their partner's leaning on them for their emotional validation. You know, Gemini, they need a partner who is strong on their own, who is interested in so many things. They're going a million miles a minute, and they got so much stuff going on in their head, and they, you know, going all these different directions, and they have this genius to them, you know, this Gemini Mercury quickness and Quicksilver thing happening. They're afraid that maybe they really don't have the emotional depth, okay? A lot of times Geminis have been accused by loved ones in their lives that you know, can't you take this seriously? Why can't you commit to me? You know, these kinds of things. And the Gemini, this is an issue for them, something that they really worry about, because as I said earlier, that heart space is not their natural habitat, okay? They are cerebral, and they are, you know, throat chakra, they're communicators. Heart stuff, intuition, this does not have words. So unless that Gemini has some strong placements in their chart, that they need some water placements or even some fire, which will bring them down into their body at least, or earth. You know, this is going to be a fear of theirs. They're going to worry that they don't have emotional depth. So don't ever accuse them of being shallow, right? See them and meet them where they're at and help them put words to their feelings. Help them put words to the things that they can't voice, okay? That's how you can help them overcome this fear and help them to grow. Aries and Gemini. All right, what will initially attract or sort of repel these two would be the busyness factor. There's a lot of exciting, electric, friendly, easy, sociable energy between these two zodiac signs. Gemini being, you know, the sign ruled by Mercury, it's communication. Geminis are very bubbly, friendly. They're all over the place. They're kind of bouncing all around. And then you've got our Aries, that's fire, and Aries is the first sign in the zodiac. So they're go, go, go. They're very interested in new things, and there's a freshness to both of these signs, so they get one another. The ways that they might repel each other, I don't really see these two, just these Aries to Gemini repelling each other necessarily, other than just them they need a focus. Like they need ADD medication, Adderall required. These two can kind of change their plans a lot, change their minds a lot, and they're both sort of these Aries is a passionate sign and it's a spontaneous sign, and Gemini is also quite active and moving, so they need to be a little more grounded. So hopefully that you've got some moons in there, or with some earth, or you've got, you know, maybe some other things happening in these between these two people that will give them a little bit of steadiness and slow them down a bit. Or some Saturn connections would be good too. If you've got some Saturn, you know, a trine or a conjunction to either of these suns, it might kind of slow the other person down a little bit and give them some commitment and consistency. Long-term interaction between these two, assuming there is a long-term connection, you would almost you'd have to see, like I said, some earth. I mean, one of them will have an earthy moon, or both of them will have earthy moons, or they will have their moon in one of the earth houses, okay? So that would be the 2nd house, the 6th house, I have to go through this in my head, 10th house, you know, so it'll be in one of these houses. Now, with Aries and Gemini, you can have issues where the Aries can be a little bit jealous with Gemini. And Aries is not always a jealous sign necessarily. They're kind of free to do their own thing. But with Gemini, because Gemini is so social and they need a lot of social contacts and they're very bubbly and friendly, Aries can feel like, oh, are you flirting with this person? Or, you know, they can sense some jealousy. They can feel jealous over just some innocent Gemini behavior. Also, Aries might feel like they can never quite capture Gemini. Gemini's kind of like Tinkerbell. Aries is like Peter Pan, and he can never quite grab her, you know, she's too quick. And so that can be problematic. And in the, let's say with an Aries female and a Gemini male, this dynamic is a little bit different. The Aries female, because she is fiery, she's got to be careful not to, again, this is the Aries females, you've got, there's this strength to the Aries female that in our Western culture can be a little challenging. And with a Gemini male, he is a mutable sign, so he's going to be someone that's pretty flexible and easygoing. So he'll be more apt to play around with Aries' hotness and her fieriness and her assertive aggressiveness. He'll kind of just volley with it and probably make jokes about it. So that's good, but just be careful that you don't, you know, you're not overly assertive or overly aggressive with your Gemini. You don't want to emasculate him because he will just go away. He will leave. Both of these signs are prone to just kind of going in their own directions if they're not happy. Okay, specific areas of conflict and harmony. Conflict between these two would be what we said already, just the fact that they can't sort of figure out what they're going to be doing with themselves and they're always changing their minds. That can be an issue. Now also though, with Gemini and Aries can have little temper tantrums, and Gemini just is illogical. It's an air sign, and Gemini will just sort of be, because Gemini operates sort of on this surface social level, it doesn't quite understand why Aries freaks out the way that they freak out, because nothing was meant by their behavior. So it's unwarranted behavior when Aries has their little temper tantrums. Now, harmony, though, between these two, they will feed each other, they will keep each other energized and alive, and there are always new, exciting things to be done together. And they're two peas in a pod as far as just their little adventures and ideas. They'll always be coming up with new, fun ideas for one another to enjoy. Others will see this partnership as a youthful, playful, ideal partnership, as long as they can kind of keep the commitment going. This is a very on-again, off-again energy to these two. So as long as they've got some things in there that will keep them steady, this is considered like a, you know,